Richard Hartwell, fourth, grabbed his assistant by the throat and slammed him against the wall of his penthouse office. "You're telling me," he hissed through clenched teeth, "that some pregnant cleaning lady just bought my family's estate for $350? Sir, I can't breathe." Richard released him. The assistant collapsed to his knees, gasping. "Find her, tonight. I want to know where she sleeps, where she works, who she loves, what she fears." Richard straightened his tie, his composure returning like a mask sliding into place. "That collection is worth $200 million. My grandfather spent his entire life trying to prove it existed. My father died believing it was real. And now some nobody is going to waltz in and take what 3 generations of Hartwells have been searching for. What do you want me to do when I find her?" Richard smiled. It was the kind of smile that made his assistant's blood run cold. Make her understand that the Hartwell family doesn't ask twice. And if she has a problem with that... He picked up a crystal paperweight from his desk and hurled it at the window. The glass cracked, but didn't shatter. "Well, accidents happen to pregnant women all the time." But Richard Hartwell didn't know something crucial about Sarah Mitchell. She had already lost everything, her husband, her savings, her hope. And a woman with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous enemy you can make. Before we continue this incredible story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Watch until the very end, because I promise you, the twist will leave you breathless. And comment below telling us what city you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Now let's begin. The call came at 3:47 in the morning. Sarah Mitchell was already awake. She hadn't really slept in 6 months, not since 2 police officers knocked on her door with their hats in their hands. "Mrs. Mitchell, there's been an accident. Daniel, her husband, gone in an instant when a crane cable snapped at his construction site." Now she sat in darkness, one hand on her pregnant belly, staring at her phone as it buzzed. She answered, "Hello." "Sarah, it's Dr. Foster. I'm sorry to call so late." Sarah's heart stopped. Doctors don't call at 3:47 a.m. with good news. "The baby's heart condition is worse than we thought. Much worse. She'll need surgery within days of being born." "How much?" "Sarah, how much?" Silence. "Then $220,000. Sarah laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "I have $347. My husband's life insurance was denied. I clean houses for $11 an hour. You're telling me I need to work 20,000 hours to save my daughter." "There are programs, payment plans." "I've applied to all of them. Denied, waitlisted. Sorry we can't help you." Sarah's voice cracked. "Just tell me the truth, Dr. Foster. Without the surgery, how long does she have?" "A few weeks, maybe a month." The room spun. Sarah gripped her mattress. "I'll figure something out." "Sarah, please don't do anything." She hung up. In the silence of her tiny apartment, Sarah felt her baby kick. Strong, insistent, fighting. "I won't let you die," she whispered. "I don't know how yet, but I won't let you die." The next morning, Sarah dragged herself out of bed at 5:30. She had 3 houses to clean. $85 total. It wouldn't save her daughter, but it would keep the lights on for another week. She was halfway out the door when someone pounded on it from the other side. Sarah opened it to find her landlord, a heavy man named Frank with yellow teeth and wandering eyes. "Rent's late." "I know. I'll have it Friday." "You said that last month." He leaned against the doorframe, blocking her exit. "I've been patient, Sarah. Real patient. But patience runs out." "Please, I just need a few more days." Frank's eyes dropped to her belly. "Must be hard doing this alone. No husband, no family." He smiled and Sarah felt sick. "Maybe we could work something out, an arrangement." Sarah's hand tightened on the doorknob. "I'll have your money Friday." "Friday?" He stepped back. "Or you're out, both of you." He walked away and Sarah stood in her doorway, shaking with rage and fear and something else. Desperation, the kind that makes people do crazy things. Sarah's first client was Patricia Webb, a 73-year-old widow who lived alone and always paid in cash. "You look terrible," Patricia said when she opened the door. "Sit down." "I need to work." "Sit." Sarah sat. Patricia made tea. And somehow, the whole story came pouring out. Out the phone call, the diagnosis, the impossible sum of money. When Sarah finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. "My granddaughter had a heart defect," she finally said. 26 years ago. Doctors said she wouldn't make it. We sold everything, borrowed from everyone. She's a nurse now, 3 kids. "I don't have anything to sell." "Then find something." Patricia leaned forward. "Do you believe in miracles, Sarah?" I used to. Start believing again, because when you're at the very bottom, that's when the universe throws you a rope. You just have to be brave enough to grab it. Sarah wanted to believe her. She really did. Sarah's second house belonged to Gerald Whitmore, a retired banker who rarely spoke to her. She let herself in through the service entrance and began her routine. She was dusting his study when something slipped from between two books and fluttered to the floor. A newspaper clipping. Yellowed? Old? Sarah picked it up. Historic Hartwell Estate to be auctioned. Minimum bid just $400. Her eyes flew across the article. 22,000 square feet. 15 acres. Built 1909. Abandoned 50 years. Sold as is by the county for unpaid taxes. Auction Saturday, 3 days away. Sarah's mind raced. $400 for a mansion. Even falling apart, the land alone had to be worth something. $20,050 if she could buy it cheap and sell it for anything that would be a start. It was insane. It was desperate. It was the rope Patricia had told her to look for. Sarah tore off the corner with the auction details and slipped it into her pocket. That night, Sarah researched the Hartwell estate on her cracked laptop. What she found made her breath catch. William Hartwell had been one of the wealthiest men in America. Shipping magnate. Art collector. His wife Eleanor was famous for her jewelry. And then, April 1912. The articles were vague, but something catastrophic had happened. Hartwell withdrew from society completely, sealed himself in his mansion, never emerged until his death in 1958. There were other stories, too. Ghost sightings, strange lights, local teenagers daring each other to approach the gates. A house everyone feared was a house no one would bid on. Sarah checked her bank account. $347. She called Patricia. I need to borrow $60. What for? A miracle. Patricia didn't hesitate. Come get it. Saturday morning, the county courthouse. Sarah sat in the back row, her borrowed money clutched in her sweating palm. The room was nearly empty, a young couple taking selfies, a bored man in an expensive suit scrolling his phone, two elderly women shaking their heads at property photos. The auctioneer droned through the details. Hartwell Estate, 15 acres. 22,000 square feet. Minimum bid $400. Do I hear 400? Silence. Sarah raised her trembling hand. $350. Minimum is $400, ma'am. $350 is everything I have. The auctioneer sighed. He looked around. No one else moved. Fine. $350. Do I hear $360? Nothing. $350 going once. Sarah's heart pounded. Going twice. Please, please, please. Sold to bidder 23. Sarah couldn't breathe. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. But as she walked to the registration table, she didn't notice the man in the expensive suit watching her. She didn't see him raise his phone and photograph her face. And she didn't hear him make a call. Yeah, it's me. Some pregnant woman just bought the Hartwell place. Looks like she doesn't have 2 cents. You're going to want to tell Mr. Hartwell. The Hartwell estate sat at the end of a winding driveway choked with weeds. Sarah drove slowly, her old Honda groaning over every pothole. When the mansion emerged from the trees, she gasped. Even rotting it was magnificent. Stone columns, arched windows, a grand entrance with doors carved like cathedral gates. Sarah parked and stepped out. The air smelled like decay and old secrets. She tried the first key. Nothing. The second key. Nothing. The third key slid in and stuck. Sarah jiggled it. Pushed. Pulled. Nothing. Come on, she muttered. Come on. She was about to give up when something clicked. The key turned. The door groaned open, and Sarah stepped into another world. Dust. Silence. A grand staircase sweeping upward. A chandelier frozen in time, crystals dulled by decades of neglect. Sarah moved through the house slowly, photographing everything. Dining room, kitchen, parlor, everything was untouched. No graffiti, no vandalism, just abandoned. Why a mansion this valuable? She reached the library and stopped. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Thousands of volumes. A fortune in rare books just sitting here. And something else. One section of shelf didn't match the others. It jutted out slightly, maybe an inch. Sarah ran her fingers along the edge and felt a seam, a hidden door. Her heart hammered. She pushed, pulled. Nothing moved. Then she noticed a red-spined book pushed deeper than the others. She pulled it. Click. The bookshelf swung inward, revealing a narrow stone passage descending into darkness. Sarah stood at the threshold, her flashlight cutting through the black. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to call someone, to not go down there alone 7 months pregnant in an abandoned mansion. But she thought about her baby, about the surgery, about the $220,000 she didn't have. She stepped into the passage. The air grew cold. The passage twisted downward. Sarah had to turn sideways in places to fit her belly through. After what felt like forever, the passage opened into a small room. A desk, a chair, and a leather journal sitting alone like it had been waiting for her. Sarah picked it up with trembling hands. Private Record of William Hartwell, 1912. She opened it and began to read. The first entries were mundane shipping records, business correspondence. Then she reached April 20th, 1912. The ship has sunk. All is lost. 1,500 souls. My collection, Eleanor's jewels, everything I sent on that cursed vessel gone to the bottom of the Atlantic. Sarah's breath caught. The ship, the Titanic. She kept reading. I am ruined, not just financially, the weight of it, the guilt. I trusted that unsinkable ship with everything I loved. May 5th. I am withdrawing from society. Let them think me mad. I will seal myself away with what remains. And then June 1st, 1912. The vault is complete. Everything I saved, everything that never made it aboard, I have secured. A vault that will outlast me, outlast this house. The door is sealed. The combination known only to me. When I die, let it stay buried. Some treasures are too painful to see the light. Sarah sat back, her mind racing. William Hartwell had built a vault. He'd hidden something here, things that survived. Things that never made it onto the Titanic, and that vault was somewhere in this house. Sarah searched for hours. She found more journals in the master bedroom. Hartwell's handwriting grew shakier over the decades. 40 years since the ship went down, I remain the guardian of what was lost. And in the margins of one page, a sketch, a floor plan, an X marked beneath the wine cellar, one word beside it, vault. Sarah ran. The wine cellar was behind a locked door under the main staircase. Her brass key fit perfectly. She descended into darkness. Empty wine racks stretched into shadow. Cobwebs hung like ghostly curtains. And at the far end, a wall of steel. 6 feet tall, 4 feet wide, a combination lock in the center. Sarah tried everything. Hartwell's birthday, the Titanic's sinking date, his wife's death. Nothing worked. Then she remembered. June 1st, 1912, the day he sealed the vault. 6112. She spun the dial. 6112. Click. Sarah turned the wheel. The door swung open. Her flashlight illuminated wooden crates. Dozens of them stacked floor to ceiling. Labels in careful handwriting recovered April 1912. Survivor's effects. Collection preserved. Sarah approached the nearest crate, pried off the lid, and screamed. Not from what was inside the crate, from what was beside it. A skeleton. Human. Slumped against the wall in the corner, dressed in rotted fabric that might once have been an elegant gown. A journal lay open in its lap. Sarah's hands shook violently as she picked it up. The handwriting was different, feminine, elegant. If anyone finds this, know the truth. My name is Eleanor Hartwell. I did not die on the Titanic. I survived. I came home, and my husband sealed me in here to die. He said I knew too much, that I would tell people about the collection, that I would ruin him. He brought me tea. It was drugged. I woke up in this vault. The door was already sealed. I have been screaming for 3 days. No one can hear me. I am going to die here, surrounded by the treasures my husband loved more than me. If you find this, tell the world William Hartwell was a murderer, and the Hartwell family has been covering it up ever since. Sarah dropped the journal. She staggered backward, her flashlight sweeping wildly. Eleanor Hartwell hadn't drowned on the Titanic. She'd been murdered by her own husband, sealed in a vault with $200 million worth of treasure, and someone the Hartwell family had been hiding this secret for over a century. Sarah forced herself to breathe, to think. She needed proof. She needed to document everything. With shaking hands, she pulled out her phone and started photographing. The skeleton, the journal, the crates, and then she opened the crates. Jewelry. Diamonds? Rubies, emeralds, each piece wrapped in oilcloth, perfectly preserved. Paintings rolled in waterproof canvas. Documents, stock certificates, deeds, and a necklace with a blue diamond the size of a quail's egg. Sarah photographed everything. It took 2 hours. Her phone battery dropped to 12%. When she finally climbed back up into daylight, she felt like she was surfacing from a nightmare. She'd bought a mansion for $350. Inside it, she'd found a murdered woman and a fortune in Titanic artifacts. And somewhere out there, the Hartwell family was already hunting her. Dr. Elizabeth Crane arrived the next morning. She was small, silver-haired, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. A Titanic expert, author of 4 books on the disaster. Sarah had sent her 10 photographs. Elizabeth had driven 3 hours without stopping. Now she stood in the vault, white-gloved hands trembling as she examined the collection. "My God," she kept whispering. "My God," she photographed, measured, made notes. 2 hours of meticulous documentation. Finally, she sat down on the cold floor and looked at Sarah. "How much?" Sarah asked. "Conservative estimate, $200 million? Sarah grabbed a crate to steady herself. "But Sarah," Elizabeth's voice dropped. "The skeleton, the journal. This isn't just about money anymore. This is evidence of murder, a murder the Hartwell family has been hiding for over 100 years. What do I do? You need a lawyer, a good one, and you need security." Sarah's phone rang. "Unknown number?" she answered. "Miss Mitchell?" The voice was male, smooth, cold. "My name is Richard Hartwell IV. I believe you have something that belongs to my family." Sarah's blood turned to ice. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please." He laughed softly. "You bought my great-great-grandfather's estate for $350. I'm quite certain you found what's inside." "The collection was in a property I legally purchased. It's mine." "Is it the law is so flexible, especially when you have resources to interpret it creatively?" His voice hardened. "I'm offering you $500,000. Sign over everything. Walk away. Your baby gets her surgery. Everyone wins." "How do you know about my baby?" "I know everything about you, Sarah. Your apartment on Madison Street, your landlord Frank, your doctor Amanda Foster, your neighbor Patricia Webb, who loaned you $60. Sarah couldn't breathe. $500,000, Richard continued. "Take it. Save your daughter. Live your life." "And if I refuse?" Silence. Then quietly, "Pregnancy is so delicate. So many things can go wrong. Stress, accidents, complications." He paused. "It would be such a tragedy if something happened to your baby because her mother was too stubborn to accept a generous offer." "You're threatening my child." "I'm explaining reality. The Hartwell family has protected its interests for 4 generations. We don't stop, we don't negotiate, and we certainly don't lose to pregnant cleaning ladies who got lucky." The line went dead. Sarah stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. Elizabeth was staring at her. "What did he say?" "He threatened my baby." Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "He knows where I live. He knows about Sophie's heart condition. He knows everything. We need to go to the police and tell them what a rich man made vague threats on the phone." Sarah shook her head. "They won't do anything. People like him don't go to jail. People like him make people like me disappear." "So what are you going to do?" Sarah looked around the vault, at the crates, at the skeleton of Eleanor Hartwell murdered by her husband, hidden for a century. She thought about Patricia's words, "When you're at the very bottom, the universe throws you a rope." This was her rope, and she was going to hang Richard Hartwell with it. "I'm going to fight," Sarah said. "I'm going to expose everything, the collection, the murder, the century of lies. I'm going to make this so public that if anything happens to me or my baby, the whole world will know exactly who's responsible." "Sarah, these people are dangerous." "I know." Sarah picked up Eleanor's journal, held it against her chest. "But I have something they've been trying to hide for over 100 years, and I'm not going to let them bury it again." She looked down at her belly, felt her daughter kick. "They think I'm just a pregnant cleaning lady with nothing to lose." She smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "They have no idea what a mother will do to protect her child." Outside the mansion, a black sedan sat parked at the end of the driveway. Inside, a man in an expensive suit spoke into his phone. "She's still inside, sir. The historian showed up this morning. They've been in there for hours." Richard Hartwell's voice crackled through the speaker. "Stay on her. I want to know everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to. And if she goes to the police?" "She won't. She's smart enough to know they can't help her." Richard paused. "But if she becomes a real problem?" "Sir?" "Accidents happen, Mr. Pierce, especially to women who don't know their place." The man in the sedan nodded slowly. "Understood, sir." He hung up and settled in to wait. The hunt had begun, and Sarah Mitchell had no idea she was already prey. Sarah didn't go home that night. She couldn't. Richard Hartwell knew where she lived. He knew her landlord, her doctor, her neighbor. Going back to that apartment would be walking into a trap. Instead, she drove to Patricia Webb's house at 9:47 p.m., her hands shaking on the steering wheel, her eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror. Patricia opened the door in her bathrobe, took one look at Sarah's face, and pulled her inside. What happened? Sarah told her everything. The vault, the skeleton, Eleanor Hartwell's journal, the $200 million, the phone call from Richard Hartwell, the threats against her baby. When she finished, Patricia was silent for a long moment. You found a murdered woman in that house. Yes? And the family that killed her is now threatening to kill you. Yes. Patricia stood up and walked to her closet. She pulled out a shoebox from the top shelf, opened it, and removed a handgun. My late husband's, she said. I've kept it loaded for 30 years. Patricia, I can't. You can and you will. Patricia pressed the gun into Sarah's hands. I buried 2 husbands and lost a daughter to cancer. I know what it looks like when death comes knocking, and right now death is knocking on your door, Sarah. You need to be ready to answer. Sarah stared at the gun, cold, heavy, real. I don't know how to use this. Point and pull. It's not complicated. Patricia gripped Sarah's shoulders. Now listen to me. You're going to sleep in my guest room tonight. Tomorrow you're going to find a lawyer, and then you're going to burn the Hartwell family to the ground. Sarah looked up at her. Why are you helping me? Patricia's eyes glistened. Because 60 years ago, I was a pregnant woman with nothing and someone helped me when no one else would. This is me paying it forward. She paused. And because those rich bastards have been getting away with murder literally for too long, someone needs to stop them. Sarah slept for 3 hours. Nightmares woke her at 2 a.m., dreams of being sealed in a vault, screaming no one coming. She lay in Patricia's guest bed, one hand on her belly, the other on the gun beside her pillow. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Can't sleep, Sarah. Richard Hartwell's voice was almost gentle. Neither can I. I've been thinking about our conversation. How did you get this number? I told you. I know everything about you. He chuckled softly. I know you're not at your apartment right now. I know you're at 847 Maple Street. Patricia Webb's house isn't at Nice, old lady. Shame if something happened to her. Sarah's blood froze. Leave her out of this. Then stop running. Stop hiding. Accept my offer. His voice hardened. $500,000. Final offer. Take it by noon tomorrow or I stop being generous. And if I don't, then I'll take everything from you. The collection, your reputation, your baby. He paused. And maybe your life. Accidents happen, Sarah. All the time. The line went dead. Sarah sat up, her heart pounding. He knew where she was, right now, this very moment. She ran to the window and looked out at the dark street. A black sedan sat parked 3 houses down, its engine running. They were watching her. 8:23 a.m. Sarah sat in the office of Marcus Webb, a property attorney Elizabeth had recommended. No relation to Patricia, though the coincidence felt like fate. Marcus was 62, silver-haired, with the kind of face that had seen everything and was surprised by nothing. Let me understand this correctly, he said, reviewing the document Sarah had spread across his desk. You purchased the Hartwell estate for $350. Inside, you discovered a collection of Titanic artifacts worth approximately $200 million. You also discovered the skeletal remains of Eleanor Hartwell and a journal indicating she was murdered by her husband in 1912. Yes. And now, Richard Hartwell IV is threatening you and your unborn child to force you to surrender the collection. Yes? Marcus leaned back in his chair. Miss Mitchell, you've walked into the middle of a century-old conspiracy involving one of the wealthiest families on the East Coast. I know. They have lawyers, connections, resources you can't imagine. I know. They could bury you in litigation for the next 20 years. They could make your life a living hell. They could... He stopped. Why are you smiling? Sarah wasn't smiling exactly. It was something harder, something fiercer. Because they have everything to lose, she said. And I have nothing. My husband is dead. I'm about to be evicted. My baby needs surgery I can't afford. What are they going to do make my life worse? It's already rock bottom. She leaned forward. But them, they have a reputation, a legacy, a name that's been respected for 4 generations. And I have proof that their ancestor was a murderer who sealed his wife in a vault to die. That's worth more than any lawsuit. Marcus studied her for a long moment. You're not what I expected, he finally said. What did you expect? A victim, someone looking to settle. He smiled slowly. Instead, I got a fighter. Will you help me? Marcus stood and extended his hand. Miss Mitchell, I've spent 40 years defending rich people from the consequences of their actions. I think it's time I did something that actually matters. I'll take your case, pro bono, on one condition." "What?" "We don't just win, we destroy them." Sarah shook his hand. "Deal." By 11:45 a.m., 15 minutes before Richard Hartwell's deadline, Sarah had assembled her team. Marcus Webb, attorney, Elizabeth Crane, historian and authenticator, and one more person someone Elizabeth had called that morning. His name was James Morrison, investigative journalist, Pulitzer Prize winner. He'd spent his career exposing corruption among the wealthy and powerful. He sat across from Sarah in Marcus's conference room recording everything on his phone. "Let me get this straight," James said. "The Hartwell family has been claiming for a century that their Titanic collection went down with the ship. Insurance claims were filed, money was collected, but the collection was actually hidden in their mansion the whole time." "Yes." "And Eleanor Hartwell, who everyone thought died on the Titanic, actually survived, came home and was murdered by her husband when she threatened to expose the fraud. That's what her journal says." James whistled low. "Insurance fraud. Murder. A century-long cover-up." He grinned. "This is going to destroy them." "When can you publish?" "I need to verify the documents, authenticate the journal, get expert opinions on the collection." He paused. "Give me 72 hours, then I'll have a story that'll be on every front page in America." Sarah's phone buzzed. 11:58 a.m., unknown number. She answered on speaker so everyone could hear. "Time's up, Sarah." Richard Hartwell's voice filled the room. "Won't." "What's your decision?" Sarah looked at Marcus, at Elizabeth, at James with his recorder running. "My decision is no." Silence on the other end. "I'm sorry. I said no. I'm not giving you the collection. I'm not giving you anything." Sarah's voice was steady. "And let me tell you what's going to happen next. In 72 hours, every newspaper in America is going to run a story about how your great-great-grandfather murdered his wife and committed insurance fraud. They're going to publish Eleanor Hartwell's journal. They're going to show photographs of her skeleton in that vault. And the Hartwell name, that legacy you're so proud of, is going to be synonymous with murder. You're bluffing." "Am I?" Sarah smiled. "Call my bluff. See what happens." Another pause. Longer this time. When Richard spoke again, his voice had changed. The smooth polish was gone, replaced by something raw and ugly. "You have no idea what you've done," he said quietly. "No idea who you're dealing with. My family has been handling problems like you for 4 generations. We don't lose, we don't back down, and we certainly don't get beaten by pregnant cleaning ladies who got lucky. There's a first time for everything. Enjoy your 72 hours, Sarah, because after that story runs, if it runs, you're going to wish you'd taken my money. You're going to wish you'd never set foot in that mansion. You're going to wish—" His voice dropped to a whisper. "You're going to wish you'd never been born." The line went dead. James stopped his recorder. "Well, that's going in the story, too." Marcus was already on his phone. "I'm calling a security company. She needs protection. 24 hours a day until this is over." Elizabeth gripped Sarah's hand. "Are you okay?" Sarah wasn't okay. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. A billionaire had just threatened to destroy her life. But beneath the fear, something else was burning. Hope. For the first time since Daniel died, she felt like she had a chance. The next 48 hours were chaos. James Morrison worked around the clock, verifying documents, interviewing experts, building his story. Elizabeth authenticated the collection piece by piece, documenting everything with museum-quality precision. Marcus filed preemptive legal motions preparing for the Hartwell family's counterattack, and Sarah stayed hidden. Patricia's house became a fortress. Security guards patrolled outside. The curtains stayed drawn. Sarah didn't leave, didn't answer her phone unless she recognized the number, didn't do anything that might give the Hartwells an opportunity. But on the second night, something happened. Sarah was in the kitchen at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, when she heard a sound outside the window. Footsteps. Soft. Careful. Someone trying not to be heard. She grabbed Patricia's gun and pressed herself against the wall, her heart slamming against her ribs. A shadow passed the window. Then another. Then a hand reached for the back door handle. Sarah raised the gun finger on the trigger, every muscle in her body screaming. The handle turned. The door opened. And Frank, her landlord, stepped inside. "Hello, Sarah," he said, his yellow teeth gleaming in the darkness. "Mr. Hartwell sends his regards." Behind him, 2 more men entered, big, silent, professional. "Gun down," one of them said. "Or we start with the old lady in the bedroom." Sarah's hands shook. She couldn't shoot 3 men. She couldn't protect Patricia. She couldn't now. She lowered the gun. Frank stepped forward and slapped her across the face. Hard. Sarah staggered, her vision exploding with stars. "That's for making me look for you," he said. "Now, where are the documents?" "The journals. The photographs." "I don't have them here." Another slap. Sarah tasted blood. "Don't lie to me. Hartwell wants everything. The journal, the photos, all of it. Hand it over, and maybe you walk out of here alive." "I sent copies to the journalist," Sarah shouted. "Everything. The murder confession, the insurance fraud, all of it. Even if you kill me tonight, the story runs in 24 hours. You can't stop it." Frank's face went pale. He pulled out his phone, dialed. "Sir, we have a problem. She says she already sent everything to the reporter." Sarah couldn't hear Richard Hartwell's response, but she saw Frank's expression change. Fear. Real fear. "Yes, sir. Understood." He hung up and looked at Sarah with something like hatred. "You just signed your death warrant. You know that, right? Hartwell doesn't forget. Hartwell doesn't forgive. Even if the story runs, even if everyone knows, he'll find a way to make you pay." "Then I'll be waiting." Frank spat at her feet. "Let's go," he said to the other men. "We're done here." They left through the back door, disappearing into the night. Sarah collapsed to the floor, shaking, bleeding alive. Patricia appeared in the doorway, her face white with terror. Sarah, what happened?" But Sarah couldn't answer. She was crying too hard. Crying with relief, with fear, with the overwhelming knowledge that she'd just survived something she shouldn't have. And that it wasn't over, it was only beginning. The story broke at 6 a.m. on the third day. James Morrison's article appeared simultaneously in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and 37 other newspapers across the country. The headline was simple and devastating. Titanic's darkest secret, Hartwell family hid murder and $200 million fraud for over a century. By 8 a.m., it was the most read story on the internet. By 10 a.m., television crews were camped outside the Hartwell corporate headquarters. By noon, Richard Hartwell IV had been forced to hold an emergency press conference. Sarah watched it from Patricia's living room, her face still swollen from Frank's attack, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. Richard stood at a podium surrounded by lawyers, his face a mask of controlled fury. "These allegations are completely false," he said. "The so-called journal is an obvious forgery. The collection was planted by individuals seeking to extort my family. We will be pursuing legal action against everyone involved in this defamatory campaign, including Miss Sarah Mitchell, who illegally trespassed on family property and manufactured evidence." A reporter raised her hand. "Mr. Hartwell, forensic experts have confirmed the journal dates to 1912. How do you explain that? Experts can be bought." "What about the skeleton? DNA testing confirms it's a female relative of the Hartwell family." Richard's jaw tightened. "No comment?" "Mr. Hartwell, did your great-great-grandfather murder his wife?" "This press conference is over." He stormed off the stage while reporters shouted questions at his back. Sarah turned off the television. "He's lying," Patricia said. "Everyone can see he's lying." "Doesn't matter," Sarah replied. "He's still rich. He still has lawyers. He can still make my life hell." Her phone rang. Marcus Webb. "Sarah, are you watching the news?" "I just saw the press conference." "Forget the press conference. Turn on Channel 7 right now." Sarah changed the channel and felt her heart stop. A photograph filled the screen. Eleanor Hartwell, young and beautiful, taken in 1911. And beside it, another photograph. Eleanor Hartwell's skeleton, exactly as Sarah had found it in the vault. The anchor was speaking. "Forensic analysis has now confirmed that the remains found in the Hartwell estate belong to Eleanor Hartwell, who was officially listed among the Titanic's victims. This raises serious questions about—" Marcus interrupted. "Sarah, the FBI just opened an investigation. Insurance fraud across state lines. Conspiracy to commit murder. Obstruction of justice. They're talking about charges against the entire Hartwell family." Sarah couldn't breathe. "What does this mean?" "It means we're winning. It means—" Marcus paused. "It means you need to be very, very careful. Richard Hartwell just lost everything. His reputation, his legacy, probably his freedom, and men like that, when they're cornered, they do desperate things." "He already sent people to beat me up." "Then he'll send worse. Sarah, I'm arranging federal protection. Until the FBI makes arrests, you're not safe." "When will that be?" "Days, maybe hours." Marcus's voice softened. "You did it, Sarah. You actually did it. You took on one of the most powerful families in America, and you won." Sarah looked down at her belly, felt her daughter kick. "I haven't won yet," she said. "Not until she's safe." The FBI arrested Richard Hartwell IV at 4:47 p.m. that same day. Sarah watched the footage on television, Richard in handcuffs, being led out of his penthouse office, Trapambi reporters screaming questions, photographers' flashes exploding like lightning. He looked directly into the camera as he passed, and for one moment his eyes seemed to find Sarah through the screen. The hatred in them was absolute. "This isn't over, Sug," he said to the cameras. "This will never be over." Then he was shoved into a black SUV and driven away. That night, for the first time in weeks, Sarah slept without nightmares. She dreamed of Daniel. He was standing in a field of sunlight, smiling at her. "You did good," he said. "You did so good." "I miss you." "I know, but you're not alone anymore." He placed his hand over her belly. "Take care of our girl." Sarah woke up crying at 3 a.m., but they were different tears now. Not tears of despair. Tears of hope. 1 week later, Sarah stood in the office of the National Maritime Museum surrounded by lawyers, historians, and museum officials. The collection had been authenticated. Every piece. 217 items in total, each one a fragment of history, a piece of the Titanic story that the world had believed was lost forever. The museum's director, a dignified man named Dr. Harrison, slid a document across the table. "Miss Mitchell, we'd like to acquire the collection for permanent display. We're prepared to offer a finder's fee of $4.2 million. Sarah stared at the number. $4.2 million. Enough for the baby's surgery. Enough to never worry about rent again. Enough to start the foundation she'd been dreaming about, helping other families who couldn't afford medical care. "There's one condition," Sarah said. "Name it." Eleanor Hartwell gets her own exhibit. Her story gets told. Not as a footnote, not as a curiosity, as the centerpiece. She survived the Titanic. She came home, and she was murdered by the people who should have protected her. Sarah's voice shook. She spent 100 years in that vault forgotten. I won't let her be forgotten anymore. Dr. Harrison smiled. "Miss Mitchell, we wouldn't have it any other way." Sarah signed the papers at 3:33 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. When she walked out of the museum, Elizabeth and Marcus were waiting. "How does it feel?" Elizabeth asked. Sarah looked up at the sky, clear, blue, infinite. "It feels like the beginning," she said. "Not the end, the beginning." Marcus's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, and his face went pale. "What?" Sarah asked. "What is it?" Marcus lowered the phone. "Richard Hartwell posted bail 2 hours ago. $10 million. He's out." Sarah's blood turned cold. "And there's more," Marcus continued. "He's scheduled a press conference for tomorrow morning. His lawyer says he's going to reveal explosive evidence that will prove you fabricated everything." "That's impossible. The FBI verified—" "I know, but he's got something, Sarah. Something he thinks will change everything." Sarah looked at Elizabeth, at Marcus, at the museum behind her where Eleanor Hartwell's story would finally be told. She'd thought she was winning, but Richard Hartwell wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The battle wasn't over. It was just entering its final, most dangerous phase. And somewhere across the city, in a penthouse office overlooking the river, Richard Hartwell Force stood at his window while watching the sunset, a phone pressed to his ear. "I want everything," he said quietly. "Every piece of dirt, every secret, every skeleton in her closet, and I want it by morning." He hung up and smiled. Sarah Mitchell had taken his family's legacy. Now he was going to take everything from her, starting with the thing she loved most. Richard Hartwell's press conference was scheduled for 9 a.m. Sarah woke at 5:47, unable to sleep, her mind racing through every possible scenario. What evidence could he have? What lies could he tell that would undo everything she'd accomplished? Her phone buzzed. Marcus Webb. "Turn on the news, Channel 4, now!" Sarah grabbed the remote, her hands shaking. Richard Hartwell's face filled the screen. He was standing outside the federal courthouse, surrounded by reporters looking calm and confident, despite the ankle monitor visible beneath his tailored pants. "I have in my possession," he announced, "documented proof that Sarah Mitchell conspired to commit fraud. She didn't discover the Hartwell collection. She planted it." Sarah's blood ran cold. "That's impossible," she whispered. But Richard was still talking.
What's more, mate?
Miss Mitchell's late husband, Daniel Mitchell, worked as a construction foreman. What the media hasn't reported is that 3 years ago, Daniel Mitchell was investigated for theft at a job site. Valuable materials went missing. The investigation was dropped due to lack of evidence, but the suspicion remained. Sarah stopped breathing. "Furthermore," Richard continued, "I have obtained bank records showing that Sarah Mitchell deposited $15,000 in cash 6 months before she discovered the collection. Where did that money come from? Not from cleaning houses, I assure you." "That's a lie," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "That's a complete lie. but the reporters were already shouting questions. The damage was being done. Marcus called again at 6:23 a.m. "Sarah, I need you to tell me the truth. All of it, right now." "I am telling the truth. Daniel was never investigated for theft. I never deposited $15,000. He's making it up." "Then how does he have bank records?" "I don't know, forged, fabricated. He's a billionaire, Marcus. He can manufacture whatever evidence he wants." Silence on the other end. "Marcus, do you believe me?" Another pause. "Then I believe you, but believing isn't enough. We need to prove he's lying, and we have about 3 hours before his press conference destroys your credibility completely." Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. "What do I do?" "Get dressed, get to my office, and pray we can find something to fight back with." Sarah arrived at Marcus's office at 7:15 a.m. Elizabeth was already there, along with James Morrison, and a woman Sarah didn't recognize, a sharp-eyed blonde in her 40s, wearing an FBI badge. "Sarah, this is Special Agent Victoria Hayes," Marcus said. "She's leading the federal investigation into the Hartwell family." Agent Hayes didn't smile. "Miss Mitchell, I need to ask you some questions." "I didn't do anything wrong." "Then you have nothing to worry about." Hayes pulled out a tablet and showed Sarah a document. "This is a bank statement from First National showing a cash deposit of $15,000 made to your account on March 15th of this year. Is this your account?" Sarah looked at the statement, her name, her account number, her signature, but she'd never seen it before. "That's not my signature," she said. "I never made that deposit. I've never had $15,000 in my life." "The bank says otherwise." "Then the bank is wrong, or someone hacked my account, or," Sarah stopped, a terrible realization dawning, "or someone at the bank is working for Hartwell." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "That's a serious accusation." "He's a billionaire with connections everywhere. You think he can't bribe a bank employee to create fake records?" "Can you prove that?" Sarah wanted to scream. "How am I supposed to prove something I didn't do?" Marcus stepped forward. "Agent Hayes, with respect, my client is the victim here. Hartwell is clearly manufacturing evidence to discredit her." "I understand that's your position, but I have to investigate all claims." Hayes stood. "Miss Mitchell, I'd advise you not to leave town, and I'd advise you to get your story straight before Hartwell's press conference, because right now you're losing the narrative." She left. Sarah turned to Marcus, her eyes filling with tears. "They're going to believe him. They're going to believe I made it all up." "Not if we fight back." Marcus checked his watch. "We have 90 minutes. James, what do you have?" James Morrison looked up from his laptop. "I've been digging into Hartwell's finances, and I found something interesting." He turned the screen toward Sarah. 3 days ago, Richard Hartwell transferred $2 million to an offshore account in the Caymans. The same day, a man named Peter Langston, a bank manager at First National, deposited $50,000 in cash. Sarah's heart leaped. He bribed the bank manager. "It's circumstantial, but it's something." James kept typing. "I'm also finding communications between Hartwell's lawyers and a private investigator. They've been building a file on you for weeks, long before you even bought that mansion." "How is that possible?" "I don't know yet, but someone tipped them off. Someone knew you were going to find that collection before you found it." Sarah frowned. "That doesn't make sense. I didn't know I was going to buy the mansion until I found that newspaper article." "Where exactly did you find that article, Camus?" "In Gerald Whitmore's study. It was tucked between some books like a bookmark." James's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Gerald Whitmore, retired investment banker." He paused. "Sarah Gerald Whitmore served on the board of Hartwell Industries from 1987 to 2003. The room went silent. "He planted the article," Sarah whispered. "He wanted me to find it." "It gets worse?" James pulled up another document. "Whitmore has been receiving monthly payments from a shell company connected to the Hartwell Family Trust. $10,000 a month for the past 5 years. Marcus slammed his hand on the desk. "They set you up. The whole thing was a setup from the beginning." "But why?" Sarah's mind was reeling. "Why would they want me to find the collection?" "Because they couldn't find it themselves," Elizabeth said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "Think about it. The Hartwell family has owned that property for generations. They've searched it dozens of times. They never found the vault because they didn't know where to look." "So they used me as a stalking horse," Sarah said slowly. "They let me buy the property, watched me explore it. It waited for me to find something they couldn't find themselves. And once you found it, they plan to take it from you. Marcus's voice was hard. The threats, the fake evidence, all of it was planned from the start. You were never supposed to be the hero of this story. You were supposed to be the patsy. Sarah felt sick. Everything she'd fought for, everything she'd risked it, had all been part of their game. But then something clicked. If they planned this, she said slowly, then they made mistakes. They left evidence. And if we can prove they set me up, then the fraud case flips, Marcus finished. They're not the victims, they're the perpetrators. Sarah looked at the clock. 8:15 a.m., 45 minutes until Hartwell's press conference. James, can you prove the connection between Whitmore and the Hartwells? I need more time. You have 45 minutes. James's jaw tightened. Then I better work fast. At 8:47 a.m., Sarah's phone rang. Gerald Whitmore's name appeared on the screen. She answered on speaker, her heart pounding. Sarah, dear, Whitmore's voice was smooth, grandfatherly. I heard about the press conference, such a terrible situation. You set me up. Silence, then a soft laugh. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Why did you do this to me? Because the Hartwells asked me to, and when the Hartwells ask, you don't say no. His voice hardened. I've known Richard's family for 40 years. I've seen what happens to people who cross them. I wasn't going to become one of those people. So you sacrificed me instead. You were nobody, a pregnant cleaning lady with no connections, no money, no power. You were perfect. He paused. I actually felt bad about it. You were a good worker, thorough, honest, but business is business. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. Did you know about Eleanor Hartwell? Did you know they murdered her? I knew there were rumors. I didn't ask questions. You helped cover up a murder. I helped my friends protect their family legacy. There's a difference, but Gamini... There really isn't, Whitmore sighed. Sarah, I'm calling to give you some advice. Take whatever deal Richard offers. Walk away. Disappear. Because if you keep fighting, they will destroy you. Not just your reputation, your baby, everyone you care about. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. You can't beat these people. No one can. Sarah looked at Marcus, at Elizabeth, at James still typing furiously on his laptop. Watch me, she said. She hung up. James looked up at 8:52 a.m., 8 minutes before the press conference. I've got it. Everyone gathered around his laptop. Gerald Whitmore's phone records, 3 calls to Richard Hartwell in the week before the auction, 2 more calls the day Sarah bought the property. James scrolled down. And here's the smoking gun. An email from Whitmore to Hartwell's private address sent 2 months ago. He read aloud, the cleaning woman took the bait. She found the article exactly where I left it. Auction is Saturday. She's desperate enough to bid. Once she finds the collection, we proceed as planned. Marcus whistled. That's conspiracy. Clear as day. There's more. James pulled up another document. I traced the shell company making payments to Whitmore. It's connected to 6 other people, all former Hartwell employees or business associates. All of them received payments in the months before the auction. They bought witnesses, Sarah said. They bought the whole scheme, and now we can prove it. James looked at the clock. We have 6 minutes. Do we crash the press conference? Sarah thought about it. About walking into that room full of reporters confronting Richard Hartwell in front of the cameras. No, she said. We do something better. She pulled out her phone and dialed Agent Hayes. Agent Hayes, this is Sarah Mitchell. I have evidence that Richard Hartwell orchestrated a criminal conspiracy to frame me, and I have it in writing. Richard Hartwell's press conference started at exactly 9 a.m. He stood at a podium in front of the federal courthouse flanked by his lawyers facing a crowd of reporters and cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, I'm here today to set the record straight. Sarah Mitchell is not a hero. She's a con artist who planted fake evidence in my family's ancestral home. She manufactured a scandal to extort money from... His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. His face went white. Mr. Hartwell, a reporter called. Is something wrong? Richard stared at his phone, his composure cracking. I need a moment, he said. He stepped away from the podium, pressing the phone to his ear. Sarah watched the live stream from Marcus's office, her heart pounding. What's happening? Elizabeth asked. I don't know, but something spooked him. On screen, Richard was arguing with someone on the phone, his face contorted with rage. His lawyers were trying to calm him down, but he shoved them away. Then he turned and walked back to the podium. This press conference is over, he announced. The reporters erupted. Mr. Hartwell, what about the evidence you promised? Are the fraud allegations true? Is Sarah Mitchell really a con artist? Richard ignored them all. He pushed through the crowd, his security team clearing a path, and disappeared into a waiting car. Marcus's phone rang. Agent Hayes? Miss Mitchell, we've arrested Gerald Whitmore. He's cooperating. Based on the evidence you provided and his testimony, we're issuing an arrest warrant for Richard Hartwell. New charges: conspiracy to commit fraud, evidence tampering, and obstruction of justice. Sarah closed her eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Hartwell has resources. He'll make bail again. This isn't over. I know, but it's a start. Richard Hartwell was arrested for the second time at 11:23 a.m., this time live on national television. Sarah watched as federal agents swarmed his car, pulled him out, and forced him to his knees on the asphalt. The cameras captured everything: his expensive suit getting dirty, his face twisted with fury, his voice screaming that this was all a mistake, a conspiracy, a witch hunt. No one was listening. The next 24 hours were a blur. James Morrison published a new article exposing the conspiracy Hartwell family orchestrated elaborate setup to frame pregnant widow. The story included Whitmore's confession, the email evidence, the financial records tracing payments to witnesses and co-conspirators. Public opinion shifted like a tidal wave. Suddenly, Sarah wasn't just a hero, she was a victim who'd been targeted by a powerful family and had fought back against impossible odds. The museum called to confirm the collection acquisition was still on track. The FBI called to say additional charges were being filed. Marcus called to say he was being interviewed by CNN, and Patricia Webb called to say she was proud. But Sarah couldn't celebrate. Something was wrong. She felt it in her bones, in her gut, in the way her baby had stopped kicking. At 3:15 p.m., Sarah doubled over, with pain. Something's wrong, she gasped. Elizabeth caught her before she fell. Sarah, what is it? The baby. Something's wrong with the baby. They rushed her to the hospital. The drive took 12 minutes, but felt like hours. Dr. Foster met them in the emergency room, her face grim. Sarah, your blood pressure is dangerously high. The baby is in distress. We need to do an emergency C-section, now. But she's not due for another 5 weeks. I know, but if we wait, we could lose her. Dr. Foster gripped Sarah's hand. We could lose both of you. Sarah looked at Elizabeth, at Patricia, who had somehow arrived at the faces of people who had become her family over the past impossible weeks. Do it, she said. Save my daughter. They wheeled her into surgery at 3:47 p.m. Sarah counted the ceiling tiles as they prepared her. 17, 18, 19. She thought about Daniel, about how badly she wished he was here. She thought about Eleanor Hartwell sealed in a vault for 100 years alone and forgotten. She thought about Richard Hartwell in a jail cell right now, still trying to destroy her even from behind bars. And she thought about her daughter. The baby she'd fought so hard to save. The baby who was about to be born 5 weeks early with a heart defect in an emergency surgery. Please, Sarah whispered to no one, to everyone, to God if he was listening. Please let her live. I've done everything I can. Please just let her live. The anesthesia started to take effect. The last thing she heard was Dr. Foster's voice, scalpel, then darkness. Sarah woke at 6:12 p.m. Everything was blurry, muffled, wrong. Sarah, can you hear me? Patricia's face swam into focus. The baby, Sarah croaked. Where's my baby? Patricia's eyes filled with tears. She's alive, Sarah, she's alive. Sarah tried to sit up, but pain exploded through her abdomen. I need to see her. You will, soon. But Sarah, Patricia hesitated. There were complications. The surgery to fix her heart, they had to do it immediately. She's still in the operating room. Sarah's world narrowed to a single point. Is she going to make it? The doctors are doing everything they can. That wasn't an answer. Sarah grabbed Patricia's hand with all the strength she had. Is my daughter going to live? Patricia's tears spilled over. I don't know, honey. I don't know. The next 4 hours were the longest of Sarah's life. She lay in her hospital bed, unable to move, unable to sleep, unable to do anything but stare at the ceiling and pray. Patricia sat beside her, holding her hand. Marcus called. Elizabeth called. James Morrison called. Sarah didn't answer any of them. At 10:23 p.m., Dr. Foster walked into the room. Her surgical scrubs were stained with blood. Her face was exhausted, but she was smiling. Miss Mitchell, she said, would you like to meet your daughter? Sarah burst into tears. They wheeled her to the NICU at 10:31 p.m. Her daughter was tiny, so impossibly tiny. She lay in an incubator surrounded by machine wires attached to her chest, a tube helping her breathe. But her eyes were open, dark like Daniel's. and when Sarah reached through the incubator's opening and touched her daughter's hand, those tiny fingers wrapped around her index finger and held on. "Hey, baby girl," Sarah whispered through her tears. "I'm your mama, and I've been fighting for you since before you were born." The baby made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like acknowledgement. "Her heart is strong," Dr. Foster said from behind her. "The surgery was a success. She'll need to stay in the NICU for a few weeks, but Miss Mitchell, she's going to be fine. She's going to live a completely normal life." Sarah couldn't speak, couldn't think, could only hold her daughter's hand and cry. "What's her name?" Dr. Foster asked. Sarah looked at her baby, this tiny fighter who had survived against all odds. "Hope," she said. "Her name is Hope, because that's what she gave me when I had nothing else." 3 days later, Sarah sat in her hospital room with Marcus signing documents. "The FBI has formally dropped all investigations into use," Marcus said. "Whitmore's testimony plus the documentary evidence completely exonerated you. Richard Hartwell is being charged with 14 federal crimes. His bail has been revoked. He's not getting out this time." Sarah nodded, but she was only half listening. Her mind was on Hope Stable now, but still in the NICU. "There's one more thing." Marcus slid another document across the table. "The insurance companies that paid out claims after the Titanic sinking have agreed to a settlement. They're not pursuing recovery of the collection, and in exchange for your cooperation in the historical documentation, they're adding an additional payment." "How much?" $800,000. Sarah stared at him. "On top of the museum finder's fee." "On top of the museum finder's fee. Total, you're looking at $5 million. $5 million. Enough to never worry about money again. Enough to take care of Hope forever. Enough to help other families like hers." "I want to start a foundation," Sarah said, "for families who can't afford medical care for their children. Can you help me set that up?" Marcus smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." The news of Richard Hartwell's permanent incarceration broke on April 15th. The date seemed significant somehow, the anniversary of the Titanic's sinking more than a century ago. Sarah watched the coverage from her hospital room, Hope finally in her arms, breathing on her own for the first time. Richard Hartwell IV was sentenced today to 43 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, obstruction of justice, and attempted witness tampering. The anchor reported, "The judge called his crimes a century-long corruption of justice and said the sentence reflected not just Hartwell's personal crimes, but the accumulated sins of his family." Sarah changed the channel. She was done watching the Hartwells fall. She had better things to focus on now. "You're going to have quite a story to tell when you grow up," she whispered to Hope. "How your mama bought a haunted mansion for $350 and found a $200 million treasure and took down a family of murderers and villains." Hope yawned. "Okay, maybe we'll wait until you're older." A knock at the door. Patricia entered carrying flowers and balloons. "How are my girls?" "We're good," Sarah smiled. "We're really good." Patricia sat down beside the bed and looked at Hope with wonder. "She's beautiful, Sarah. Daniel would have been so proud." "I know." Sarah's eyes glistened. "I feel like he's been watching over us this whole time, like he led me to that mansion somehow." "Maybe he did." Patricia touched Hope's tiny cheek. "Miracles happen, Sarah. You're living proof of that." Sarah looked at her daughter, at this tiny life she'd fought so hard to protect. She thought about Eleanor Hartwell, finally at rest after 100 years of silence. She thought about this collection soon to be displayed in a museum where millions of people would learn about the Titanic's true history. She thought about all the families her foundation would help, all the children who would get the medical care they needed because she'd refused to give up. And she thought about herself, a cleaning lady with nothing, a pregnant widow with no hope, a woman who'd been told again and again that she didn't matter, that she should know her place, that some things were simply beyond her reach. She'd proven them all wrong. "You know what the best part is?" Sarah said quietly. "What's that? I'm not the same person I was 3 months ago. I'm not scared anymore. I'm not waiting for someone to save me." She looked at Patricia with fierce pride. "I saved myself. I saved my daughter, and I'll never let anyone make me feel powerless again." Patricia squeezed her hand. "That's my girl." Hope made a small sound, almost like agreement. Sarah laughed through her tears and held her daughter close. The war was over, and she had won. 3 months passed like a dream Sarah never wanted to wake from. Hope grew stronger every day. By June, she was out of the NICU. By July, she was home. By August, she was laughing, reaching for things, watching the world with those dark eyes that looked so much like Daniel's. Sarah bought a small house on the outskirts of town, nothing fancy, just 3 bedrooms and a yard where Hope could play when she got older. Patricia moved into the guest room because Sarah couldn't imagine life without her anymore. The foundation was up and running. The Daniel Mitchell Foundation for Children's Medical Care had already helped 47 families pay for surgeries, treatments, and medications they couldn't afford. Every thank you letter Sarah received made her cry, and the museum exhibition was almost ready. Elizabeth called on August 15th at 8:23 a.m. "Sarah, we need to talk. Can you come to the museum this afternoon?" Something in her voice made Sarah's stomach tighten. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Just come. There's something you need to see." Sarah arrived at the National Maritime Museum at 2:15 p.m., Hope strapped to her chest in a carrier. The baby was 3 months old now, healthy and alert, her heart beating strong and steady. Elizabeth met her in the lobby, her face unreadable. "Follow me?" She led Sarah through corridors lined with artifacts, past ship models and historical photographs into a private office in the back of the museum. A woman was waiting inside. She was in her 60s, silver-haired, elegant. Something about her face seemed familiar, though Sarah couldn't place it. "Sarah," Elizabeth said, "this is Catherine Whitmore." Sarah's blood went cold. "Whitmore as in Gerald Whitmore." "His sister." Catherine's voice was soft, almost apologetic. "I know what my brother did to you. I'm not here to defend him." "Then why are you here?" Catherine glanced at Elizabeth, then back at Sarah. "Because I have something that belongs to you, something that changes everything." She reached into her bag and pulled out a leather journal, old and worn, nearly identical to the one Sarah had found in the mansion. "My brother kept this hidden for 40 years, Catherine said. "I found it when I was cleaning out his estate after his arrest. I almost burned it without reading it." She paused. "I wish I had." Sarah took the journal with trembling hands. "What is it?" Eleanor Hartwell's second journal, the one she kept before she was sealed in the vault. Sarah opened it carefully. The handwriting was the same elegant script she'd seen in Eleanor's confession. She began to read. The first entries were mundane. Social events, shopping trips, gossip about other wealthy families. Then Sarah reached an entry dated March 1912, 1 month before the Titanic sank. "I am with child. I have told no one, not even William. I fear what he will do when he learns the truth. The child is not his." Sarah's breath caught. She kept reading. "William has not shared my bed in over a year. He is consumed with his collection, his ships, his business. He has no time for a wife. But Thomas does. Thomas Brennan, William's business partner, has been my comfort, my confidant, my love, and now I carry his child." "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. "Keep reading," Catherine said. March 28th. "I have told Thomas about the baby. He wants me to leave William to run away with him to Europe. But I am afraid. William's temper is legendary. If he discovers the truth, I don't know what he will do." April 10th. "Thomas has secured passage on a ship called Titanic. He says it is the safest vessel ever built. We will sail to England then, to France, where we can start a new life together. William thinks I am going alone visiting family. He does not suspect." April 12th. "I am on the ship now. It is magnificent. Thomas is in another cabin for appearances, but he visits me every night. I have never been so happy. In a few days, we will be free." Sarah turned the page. April 14th. "Something terrible has happened. The ship has struck ice. Thomas has gone to see what is happening. I am alone in my cabin, afraid. The baby is kicking. She knows something is wrong." April 15th, 2:00 a.m. "Thomas is dead. He gave his life jacket to a child. He went down with the ship. I watched from the lifeboat as the Titanic disappeared beneath the waves. My love is gone. My baby's father is gone. But we survived. For him, we survived." Sarah looked up at Catherine, tears streaming down her face. She was pregnant when the Titanic sank. "Yes." "The baby survived." "Yes." "What happened to the child?" Catherine's face was grave. "That's where it gets complicated. Keep reading." Sarah turned to the next entry dated May 1912. "I have returned to William. I had no choice. I have no money, no family, no way to support myself and my child. Thomas's family wants nothing to do with me. I am alone. William suspects nothing. He believes the child is his. He is pleased. He says an heir will secure his legacy. June 1912. The baby was born last night. A girl. I named her Rose for the flowers Thomas used to bring me. She's beautiful. She has his eyes. William is already making plans for her future. He speaks of marriages, alliances, business arrangements. He does not see her as a child. He sees her as an asset. Sarah felt sick. July 1912, I've made a terrible mistake. I told William the truth. I could not bear the lies anymore. I thought perhaps he would understand. I thought perhaps we could raise Rose together as a family despite everything. I was wrong. He hit me. For the first time in our marriage, he struck me. He called me a whore, a disgrace, a stain on his family name. He said he would never raise another man's bastard. Then he took Rose from my arms and gave her to his servants. I have not seen my daughter since. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the journal. August 1912, William has sent Rose away. He won't tell me where. He says she's being raised by a suitable family far from here. He says I will never see her again. September 1912. I have tried to find Rose. I have hired investigators, bribed servants, begged everyone who might know. No one will help me. William has made it clear that anyone who assists me will be destroyed. October 1912. William has discovered my investigations. He is furious. He says if I continue searching for Rose, he will have me committed to an asylum. He has the power to do it. He has the connections. I am trapped. The final entry was dated November 1912. I have discovered where William hid his collection. The vault beneath the wine cellar. He thinks I don't know, but I watched him. I know the combination. I am going to confront him tonight. I am going to demand he return my daughter, or I will expose everything. The fraud, the hidden collection, all of it. Pray for me. Pray for Rose. There were no more entries. Sarah closed the journal slowly. He killed her that night, she said. She confronted him about Rose, and he killed her. That's my belief, yes. Catherine's voice was barely above a whisper. But what happened to Rose Eleanor's daughter? Catherine pulled out another document. I've spent the last 3 months trying to find out. William's financial records from 1912 show a payment to a family in Ohio, a couple named Jensen. They had no children of their own. Sarah's heart was pounding. Rose went to Ohio. Rose Jensen grew up in Ohio, married a man named Michael Brennan, ironic given her father's name, and had 3 children. She died in 1987, never knowing who her real parents were. But her children are still alive, 2 sons and a daughter. Catherine pulled out a photograph. This is Margaret Brennan. She's 72 years old. She lives in Columbus, and she has no idea that she's the great-granddaughter of Eleanor Hartwell. Sarah stared at the photograph. The woman had silver hair, gentle eyes, and a face that looked remarkably like the portrait of Eleanor that hung in the museum's collection. We have to tell her, Sarah said. That's why I came to you. Catherine leaned forward. Sarah, this isn't just about history anymore. If Margaret Brennan is Eleanor's descendant, she may have a legal claim to part of the collection. The Hartwell family stole Rose from Eleanor. They erased her from history. Margaret deserves to know the truth. Sarah looked at Elizabeth. What do you think? I think Catherine's right, but I also think we need to be careful. Elizabeth's expression was troubled. The museum acquisition is finalized. The exhibition opens in 2 weeks. If we introduce a new claimant now, it could delay everything. I don't care about the exhibition. Sarah's voice was firm. Eleanor spent 100 years in that vault forgotten. Her daughter was stolen from her. Her descendants don't even know they exist. If there's a chance to make this right, we have to take it. Elizabeth nodded slowly. Then we need to go to Ohio. Sarah, Elizabeth, and Catherine arrived in Columbus at 4:47 p.m. the following day. Margaret Brennan lived in a modest house on a quiet street, the kind of neighborhood where everyone knew their neighbors and children still played outside. Sarah knocked on the door, hope still strapped to her chest. A woman opened it. Silver hair, gentle eyes, the face from the photograph. Can I help you? Mrs. Brennan, my name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm sorry to show up unannounced, but there's something important I need to tell you. It's about your family. Margaret frowned. What about my family? May we come in? Margaret hesitated, then stepped aside. They sat in her living room surrounded by family photographs spanning decades. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, a lifetime of love and connection. Sarah didn't know how to begin. Mrs. Brennan, what do you know about your grandmother, Rose Jensen? Margaret's face softened. My grandmother, she was wonderful. Kind-loving always had time for us kids. She passed when I was 16. Did she ever talk about her parents? Not much. She was adopted. That's all she knew. Her adopted parents, the Jensens, they died when she was young. She spent most of her life not knowing where she came from. Margaret paused. Why do you ask? Sarah pulled out Eleanor's second journal. Mrs. Brennan, I found this journal in an old mansion in Virginia. It belonged to a woman named Eleanor Hartwell. She was a passenger on the Titanic. Margaret's eyes widened. The Titanic. Eleanor survived the sinking, but before she boarded, she was pregnant with another man's child, a girl named Rose. Margaret went very still. Eleanor's husband, William Hartwell, discovered the affair. He took Rose away from her mother when she was just a few months old. He sent her to a family in Ohio, a couple named Jensen. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. Mrs. Brennan, I believe your grandmother Rose Jensen was actually Rose Hartwell, Eleanor's stolen daughter. Sarah's voice trembled. Which means you are Eleanor's great-granddaughter. Silence filled the room. Then Margaret started to cry. I always knew, she whispered. Grandma Rose always said she felt like she belonged somewhere else, like there was a piece of her missing. She used to dream about a woman singing to her, a woman with dark hair and sad eyes. That would have been Eleanor. And Eleanor, what happened to her? Sarah told her everything. The vault, the skeleton, the confession, the murder that had been hidden for over a century. By the end, Margaret was sobbing. She spent 100 years alone in that vault, looking for the daughter she never found. Yes, Margaret clutched the journal to her chest. I need to see it. The vault, where she died. I need to see where my great-grandmother was buried. I can take you there, Sarah said. And there's something else. The collection Eleanor's husband hid, it's being displayed in a museum. The exhibition opens in 2 weeks. Would you like to be there, to represent Eleanor, to finally give her the recognition she deserves? Margaret looked at Sarah through her tears. You would do that after everything you would share this with me. Mrs. Brennan, this was never about me. It was about Eleanor, about justice, about making sure the truth finally came to light. Sarah reached out and took Margaret's hand. You're her legacy, you and your children and your grandchildren. Eleanor's line didn't end in that vault. It survived. Just like she always hoped it would. Margaret squeezed Sarah's hand so tight it almost hurt. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for finding her. Thank you for finding us. They flew back to Virginia on August 18th. Margaret insisted on seeing the mansion first before anything else. Sarah understood. If someone told her that her great-grandmother had been murdered and buried in a secret vault, she'd want to see it too. They arrived at the Hartwell estate at 3:15 p.m. The mansion looked different now. Restoration crews had been working for months preparing it for its new role as a satellite museum location. The ivy had been cleared, the windows had been replaced, the front doors gleamed with fresh paint, but the vault was unchanged. Sarah led Margaret down the narrow stairs through the wine cellar to the steel door that still stood open. Margaret stopped at the threshold. This is where they found her. Yes, right there in the corner. Margaret walked slowly to the spot where Eleanor's skeleton had been discovered. She knelt down and pressed her hand against the cold stone floor. I'm here, great-grandmother, she whispered. I'm here. You're Rose's granddaughter. You didn't die alone. You didn't die forgotten. Your family found you. She stayed there for a long time, crying quietly. Sarah stood at the doorway, giving her privacy, her own eyes wet with tears. When Margaret finally stood, her face was transformed. The grief was still there, but underneath it was something else. Peace. She can rest now, Margaret said. After 100 years, she can finally rest. The next week was chaos. News of Margaret Brennan's discovery spread through the media like wildfire. Eleanor Hartwell's stolen daughter, a living descendant, the family that had been erased from history finally restored. The museum scrambled to update the exhibition. Margaret was added to the narrative her family photographs included alongside Eleanor's artifacts. The story was no longer just about the Titanic or the Hartwells. It was about a mother's love that had survived across generations. Marcus called on August 22nd at 9:47 a.m. Sarah, we have a problem? Her stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Richard Hartwell's lawyers have filed a motion to delay the museum exhibition. They're claiming that Margaret Brennan's appearance constitutes a new claim on the estate and that everything needs to be relitigated. That's ridiculous. He's in prison. He's in prison, but his family trust still has resources, and they're using those resources to fight back. Sarah felt the old anger rising. He can't do this. He's already lost. He's trying to delay. If the exhibition doesn't open on schedule, if the story loses momentum, he thinks he can claw back some control. Marcus paused. Sarah, I need you to make a decision. We can fight this in court, but it will take time. The exhibition might have to be postponed. No, Sarah's voice was steel. The exhibition opens on August 29th exactly as planned. I don't care what Richard Hartwell does. He's already taken everything he can from Eleanor. He's not taking this too. Sarah, find a way. Marcus, that's what I pay you for. She hung up. Elizabeth called 2 hours later. Sarah, I just heard about the Hartwell motion. What are we going to do? We're going to fight. How? Sarah thought about it. About everything she'd learned over the past 4 months. About the power of stories. About the way public opinion could shift like a tide. We go public, she said. We tell everyone what Richard Hartwell is trying to do. We make him look like exactly what he is, a convicted criminal trying to erase his family's crimes from history. The museum won't like that. They prefer to handle things quietly. Then the museum can get on board or get out of the way. Sarah's voice was hard. This isn't about them anymore. This is about Eleanor. This is about Margaret. This is about every person who's ever been silenced by people with more money and power. I'm done being quiet. James Morrison published the story on August 24th, August 24th. Convicted Hartwell heir tries to block museum exhibition from prison. The article detailed Richard's legal maneuver, his family's century-long cover-up, and the desperate attempt to delay justice even now. Public outrage was immediate. Within 24 hours, the museum's website crashed from the volume of traffic. People were calling, emailing, showing up in person to demand the exhibition open on schedule. A petition gathered 50,000 signatures. News cameras camped outside the museum. The museum's board held an emergency meeting on August 25th. Sarah was invited to attend. Dr. Harrison, the museum director, looked exhausted. Miss Mitchell, we're under enormous pressure. The Hartwell lawyers are threatening to sue us if we proceed, but the public is threatening to boycott us if we don't. Then the choice is simple, Sarah said. The public wins. It's not that simple. Legal liability. Dr. Harrison, let me ask you something. Why does this museum exist? He blinked. Excuse me. Why does it exist? What's its purpose? To preserve and share history. Exactly. To share history, not to hide it, not to let rich families decide what the public gets to see. Sarah leaned forward. Eleanor Hartwell spent 100 years in a vault because her husband thought he could bury the truth. Richard Hartwell is trying to do the same thing right now from a prison cell. If you let him win, you're no better than William was. Silence around the table. Dr. Harrison looked at the other board members. One by one, they nodded. The exhibition opens August 29th, he said. As scheduled. Sarah smiled. Thank you. The morning of August 29th arrived gray and cool, the kind of weather that made you want to stay in bed. Sarah woke at 5:12 a.m. too nervous to sleep. Today was the day. She dressed carefully in a simple black dress she'd bought specifically for this occasion. Hope wore a tiny white outfit with a bow in her hair. Patricia helped her get ready, fussing over every detail. You look beautiful, Patricia said. Daniel would be so proud. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I wish he could be here. He is, honey. He's been here all along. They arrived at the museum at 8:47 a.m. The line to get in stretched around the block. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, waiting to see the exhibition that had become the most talked-about cultural event of the year. Elizabeth met Sarah at the entrance. Are you ready? No? Sarah laughed nervously. But that's never stopped me before. Margaret Brennan was waiting inside, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. 3 generations of Eleanor's descendants finally reunited with their history. Thank you, Margaret said, hugging Sarah tightly. Thank you for everything. Thank me after the speech. I might throw up. Margaret laughed. You'll be fine. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was scheduled for 10 a.m. Sarah stood at the podium facing a crowd of reporters, historians, museum patrons, and ordinary people who had come to witness history. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was pounding. But when she looked down at Hope in Patricia's arms, she found her courage. 112 years ago, Sarah began. A woman named Eleanor Hartwell boarded a ship called the Titanic. She was pregnant, afraid, and running from a husband who had never loved her. She survived the sinking, but her love, the father of her child, did not. When she returned home, her husband discovered the truth. In his rage, he took her daughter away. He sent the child to strangers. And then when Eleanor tried to fight back, he sealed her in a vault and left her to die. For over a century, Eleanor's story was erased. Her daughter Rose grew up never knowing who her real mother was. Her descendants lived their lives with no knowledge of the tragedy that had shaped their family. Until now. Sarah gestured to Margaret, who stood at the front of the crowd, with tears streaming down her face. This is Margaret Brennan, Eleanor Hartwell's great-granddaughter, Rose's granddaughter, the living proof that Eleanor's line did not end in that vault. A murmur went through the crowd. Today, we're not just opening a museum exhibition, we're correcting a historical wrong. We're giving Eleanor the voice she was denied. We're honoring the memory of a mother who loved her daughter so much that she died trying to find her. Sarah paused, collecting herself. I'm not a historian. I'm not a museum professional. I'm a cleaning lady who bought an abandoned mansion because I was desperate to save my own daughter's life. But in that mansion, I found something more valuable than any treasure. I found the truth, and I learned that the truth has a power that no amount of money can buy. Richard Hartwell tried to silence Eleanor. His descendants tried to silence me. But here we are. Eleanor's story will be told. Her daughter's descendants know who they are. And the Hartwell family's century of lies has finally come to an end. Sarah looked at the crowd, at the cameras, at all the faces watching her. Let this be a lesson, she said. You can bury the truth. You can hide it in a vault. You can threaten and intimidate and destroy anyone who gets close. But the truth has a way of coming out. It might take 100 years. It might take a pregnant cleaning lady with nothing to lose, but it always comes out. Eleanor Hartwell, this exhibition is for you. May you finally rest in peace. The crowd erupted in applause. Sarah stepped down from the podium, her legs shaking, her eyes blurring with tears. Patricia was there to catch her. You did it, Patricia whispered. You really did it. Sarah looked at Hope, at Margaret, at all the people streaming into the museum to see Eleanor's story. She had done it. Against all odds, against all logic, against everything that should have stopped her, she had done it. The exhibition was magnificent. Sarah walked through it slowly, Hope on her hip, taking in every detail. The blue diamond Eleanor had worn to Titanic parties now displayed under soft lighting. The pocket watch that had stopped at 2:20 a.m. the moment of the sinking. Eleanor's journals, both of them open to key passages. And in the center of the main gallery, a memorial to Eleanor herself. A portrait enlarged and restored showing a young woman with dark hair and sad eyes. The woman Margaret's grandmother Rose had dreamed about. Beneath the portrait, a plaque, Eleanor Hartwell, 1885-1912, beloved mother, silenced victim, finally remembered. Love survives. Margaret stood in front of the memorial for a long time. She was beautiful, Margaret said softly. She was brave, Sarah replied. Just like you, just like Rose, just like all the women in your family. Margaret turned to look at Sarah. And like you. I'm not brave, I'm just stubborn. Same thing when it matters. Sarah laughed. It felt good to laugh. The museum was about to close at 6 p.m. when Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number, her heart clenched. She'd learned to fear unknown numbers. She answered anyway. Hello? Miss Mitchell? The voice was male, unfamiliar, elderly. My name is Thomas Hartwell. I'm Richard's uncle. I wonder if we might speak. Sarah's blood went cold. I have nothing to say to anyone named Hartwell. Please, just hear me out. The old man's voice was tired. I'm 87 years old. I've been silent for too long. There are things you need to know, things about Eleanor, things about what really happened. Sarah hesitated. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. My family doesn't deserve trust. But I'm dying, Miss Mitchell. Pancreatic cancer. A few months at most. He paused. I don't want to die with these secrets. Please, let me make some small amends before I go. Sarah looked at Elizabeth, who had been listening. Elizabeth nodded slowly. All right, Sarah said. Where do you want to meet? The mansion. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Thomas paused. And Miss Mitchell, come alone. What I have to tell you, it's not for public consumption. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The line went dead. Sarah stared at her phone. What could Thomas Hartwell possibly know that would change anything, and why, after all this time, did he want to share it? She had a feeling she was about to find out. Sarah arrived at the Hartwell estate at 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes early. A black car was already parked in the circular driveway. An elderly man sat in a wheelchair near the front entrance attended by a nurse. Thomas Hartwell was even older than he'd sounded on the phone. Thin, frail, his skin like paper stretched over bones. But his eyes were sharp. Miss Mitchell, thank you for coming. What do you want to tell me? Straight to the point. I respect that. Thomas gestured to the nurse. Leave us, please. Wait in the car. The nurse hesitated but obeyed. When they were alone, Thomas looked up at the mansion. I was born in this house, he said. 1937, my father was William's nephew. He inherited the estate after William died. But we never lived here. No one wanted to. Too many ghosts. Literal or figurative? Both, perhaps. Thomas turned to face Sarah. I knew about Eleanor. My father told me when I was 18, the family secret, the woman in the vault, the daughter who was sent away. Sarah's hands clenched. You knew and you did nothing. What would you have had me do? I was a teenager. Later I was a businessman. I had a wife, children, grandchildren. I told myself it was ancient history, that it didn't matter anymore. His voice cracked. I was wrong. It always mattered. Why are you telling me this now? Thomas reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope yellowed with age. Because of this, a letter William wrote to my father dated 1958, the year William died. Sarah took the envelope with trembling hands. Read it, Thomas said. She opened the letter. My dear nephew, by the time you read this, I will be dead. There are things I must confess, things I could never say while I was alive. I killed Eleanor. You know this. The family has always known. But what you don't know is why. It wasn't because of the affair. It wasn't because of the child. It was because of what she discovered. The collection in the vault is not just art and jewelry. Among the documents are papers that prove our family's fortune was built on fraud, insurance claims we never deserved, business deals that destroyed innocent people, bribes, extortion worse. Eleanor found these documents. She threatened to expose everything. Not to save herself, she knew she was doomed, but to save Rose. She thought if the truth came out, the courts would give Rose to her real father's family. She was willing to destroy the Hartwell name to rescue her daughter. I could not allow that. I sealed her in the vault with the very evidence she'd tried to use against me. I let her die surrounded by the proof of our crimes. I have regretted it every day since. The collection must never be found. The documents must never be read. If they are, the Hartwell family is finished. Protect our legacy at any cost. Your Uncle William. Sarah looked up from the letter, her mind reeling. The documents, she said. The ones in the vault, they're evidence of fraud. More than fraud. Crimes that span decades. Thomas's voice was hollow. My father destroyed most of them after William died, but not all. Some survived. Some are still in that collection. Sarah thought about the crates she hadn't opened, the documents she hadn't examined, the papers that had seemed like boring financial records. We need to go through everything again, she said. If there's evidence, there is. I've seen some of it. Records of insurance fraud totaling millions, bribery of government officials, even evidence suggesting that William may have caused the death of a business rival. Thomas paused. And there's more. Evidence that Richard knew about all of it, that he's been protecting these secrets his entire life. Sarah's heart was pounding. This could put him away forever. It could destroy the entire family. Thomas smiled sadly. Which is why I'm giving it to you. Why betray your own family? Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Because I met my wife 53 years ago. She was the kindest person I've ever known. She died last year, and in the months since I've thought a lot about what she would say if she knew the truth about my family, about what I've helped hide. His eyes filled with tears. She would be ashamed of me, and I can't go to my grave with her being ashamed. He reached out and gripped Sarah's hand. Make it right, Miss Mitchell. I'm too old and too weak to do it myself, but you have the strength I never had. Use it. Finish what Eleanor started. Sarah looked at this dying old man, this last remnant of a corrupt dynasty offering her the weapons to destroy everything he'd been raised to protect. I will, she said. I promise. Thomas nodded slowly. Then I can die in peace. He signaled for his nurse, and Sarah watched as they drove away, leaving her alone in front of the mansion that had changed her life. She pulled out her phone and called Marcus. We need to reopen the vault, she said. There's more work to do. The investigation took 3 months. Forensic accountants combed through every document in the collection. FBI agents traced financial records going back over a century. Historians pieced together a pattern of corruption that made Richard Hartwell's crimes look almost quaint. On November 15th, the federal prosecutor held a press conference. Based on new evidence provided by the Mitchell investigation, we are filing additional charges against Richard Hartwell, including conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, obstruction of justice, and accessory to historical crimes committed by the Hartwell family dating back to 1912. Sarah watched from her living room, Hope playing on the floor beside her. The prosecutor continued. Furthermore, the Hartwell family trust is being dissolved. All assets will be seized and redistributed to victims and descendants of those affected by Hartwell crimes over the past century. Patricia squeezed Sarah's hand. You did it. You actually destroyed them. No. Sarah shook her head. They destroyed themselves. I just made sure the world finally knew about it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Margaret Brennan, watching the news, crying. Eleanor would be so proud of you, we all are. Sarah smiled through her own tears. It was over. Finally, truly over. The Hartwell dynasty that had terrorized, manipulated, and murdered for over a century was finished. And Eleanor Hartwell, the woman who had started it all, by simply loving the wrong man and fighting for her daughter, had finally been avenged. 1 year later, everything had changed. Sarah stood in front of the mirror at 6:47 a.m. on April 15th, adjusting the collar of her dress. Today marked the 1-year anniversary of the museum exhibition's opening. Today marked 113 years since the Titanic sank, and today Sarah would give the most important speech of her life. Hope was walking now. 13 months old, sturdy on her feet, already showing signs of her father's stubborn determination. She toddled across the bedroom floor, grabbed Sarah's leg, and looked up with those dark eyes. Mama has to go to work, baby girl, but I'll be back soon. Sarah picked her up and held her close, breathing in the sweet smell of baby shampoo. Patricia's going to take care of you today. Papa. Yes, Papa. Sarah smiled. Hope had started calling Patricia Papa 3 months ago, and the nickname had stuck. She's going to spoil you rotten like she always does. Patricia appeared in the doorway, already dressed and ready. I heard that, and yes, I am. I don't know what I'd do without you. Probably sleep more. Patricia took Hope from Sarah's arms. Now go, you have a ceremony to attend, we'll watch on TV. Sarah kissed Hope's forehead one more time, grabbed her bag, and headed for the door. Then stopped. Patricia, thank you for everything, for the $60, for the gun, for being here when I had no one else. Patricia's eyes glistened. Go save the world, Sarah. That's thanks enough. The National Maritime Museum was packed by 9:15 a.m. Sarah had expected a crowd, but nothing like this. Thousands of people filled the halls, spilling out onto the sidewalks, waiting for hours just to be part of the anniversary celebration. Elizabeth met her at the staff entrance. You ready for this? No, but that's never stopped me. There's something you should know before you go out there. Elizabeth's face was serious. Thomas Hartwell passed away last night, peacefully in his sleep. Sarah closed her eyes. The old man who had given her the final pieces of the puzzle. The last Hartwell who had tried to make amends. Does the family know? There is no family left. Richard is in prison for life. His children have changed their names, moved abroad. The Hartwell line ends with Thomas. Elizabeth paused. He asked that you be notified first. He left you something. Left me something. Elizabeth handed her an envelope. Sarah opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single photograph. Eleanor Hartwell, young and radiant, standing beside a baby in a white christening gown. On the back in Thomas's shaky handwriting, this is the only photograph of Eleanor with Rose. My father kept it hidden for decades. It belongs with Eleanor's descendants now. Thank you for giving my family a chance at redemption. May you continue to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. Thomas. Sarah stared at the photograph, tears streaming down her face. He kept this his whole life, she whispered. He could have destroyed it. He could have pretended Eleanor never existed, but he kept it. Maybe there was good in the Hartwell family after all. Just not enough to overcome the evil. Sarah carefully tucked the photograph into her bag. I'll give this to Margaret. She should have it. Speaking of Margaret, she's waiting for you. The ceremony starts in 15 minutes. The main gallery was transformed for the anniversary celebration. A stage had been erected in front of Eleanor's memorial. Chairs filled every available space, with standing room only beyond that. Camera crews from every major network jostled for position. Sarah made her way through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, trying to smile despite the emotions churning inside her. Margaret Brennan caught her arm near the stage. Sarah, before you speak, there's someone who wants to meet you. Behind Margaret stood a young woman, maybe 25, with dark hair and sad eyes that looked startlingly familiar. This is my granddaughter, Eleanor, Margaret said. Named after her great-great-great-grandmother. Sarah's breath caught. You named her Eleanor. We wanted to honor her memory, and now that Eleanor knows the truth about her namesake, she has something to tell you. The young Eleanor stepped forward, her voice trembling. Miss Mitchell, I'm getting married next month, and I want She stopped, collected herself. I want to be married in the vault, where my ancestor died. I want to bring love back to that place. I want to show that the Hartwells didn't win, that Eleanor's story doesn't end in tragedy, it ends in joy. Sarah couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight. Would you give me away? Young Eleanor asked. You're the one who found her. You're the one who gave us our history. You're practically family now. Sarah pulled the girl into a fierce hug. I would be honored. The ceremony began at 10 a.m. sharp. Dr. Harrison took the stage first, welcoming the crowd, summarizing the incredible events of the past year. The discovery, the legal battles, the revelation of Margaret Brennan's connection to Eleanor, the final dismantling of the Hartwell Empire. Then he introduced Sarah. She walked to the podium on legs that felt like water. The crowd fell silent. 1 year ago today, Sarah began. I stood in this room and told you about Eleanor Hartwell, a woman who survived the Titanic only to be murdered by her own husband, a mother whose daughter was stolen from her, a victim who spent a century buried beneath the secrets of the powerful. She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. But Eleanor's story didn't end there. Because of what we discovered in that Vault 47, families have received justice for crimes committed against their ancestors. Because of Eleanor's journals, historians have rewritten entire chapters of Titanic history. And because of one photograph, Margaret Brennan learned who she really was. Sarah pulled out the photograph Thomas had left her. This is Eleanor Hartwell with her daughter Rose, the only photograph of them together. It was hidden for over a century by a family that wanted to erase her existence. But today I'm giving it to Margaret, because Eleanor's legacy belongs to her descendants, not to the people who tried to destroy her. She walked to where Margaret sat and placed the photograph in her hands. Margaret sobbed openly. Her children and grandchildren gathered around her, all of them crying, all of them touching the photograph like it was a sacred relic. Sarah returned to the podium. I've been asked many times over the past year what drives me, why I fought so hard, why I risked everything, my safety, my health, my daughter's life to expose the truth about a woman I never knew. She looked at the audience, at the cameras, at the world watching. The answer's simple. Because Eleanor couldn't. Because she died alone in a vault, screaming for help that never came, fighting for a daughter she would never see again. She had no voice. She had no power. She had nothing but the truth, and the truth wasn't enough to save her. Sarah's voice hardened. But the truth was enough to save us. The truth brought down a family that had terrorized and manipulated for 4 generations. The truth gave Margaret her identity. The truth gave hope to 47 families who thought justice would never come. She leaned into the microphone. And the truth, that is why I'm standing here today, not because I'm special, not because I'm brave, but because I refused to be silenced. Because when powerful people told me to give up, I said no. Because when they threatened my baby, I fought harder. Because when they tried to bury the truth, I dug it up and showed it to the world. The crowd was absolutely still. 1 year ago, I was a pregnant cleaning lady with $347 and no hope. Today, I'm the founder of a foundation that's helped hundreds of families. Today, I'm the mother of a healthy, happy daughter. Today, I'm proof that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Sarah straightened her shoulders. So here's what I want you to remember. Not my name, not this museum, not even Eleanor Hartwell. I want you to remember that the truth always wins. It might take a century, it might take a desperate woman with nothing to lose, but it always wins. And if you ever find yourself facing impossible odds, if you ever feel like you're too small to make a difference, if you ever think about giving up, remember Eleanor, remember me, remember that the people who try to silence us are the ones who fear us most. We are not powerless, we are not voiceless, and we will never ever stop fighting. The crowd erupted. Sarah stepped down from the podium into a storm of applause, its cameras flashing, people shouting her name, but she barely noticed, because her phone was buzzing. A text from Patricia. Turn on the news, Channel 7, right now. Sarah found a quiet corner and pulled up the live stream on her phone. A breaking news banner filled the screen. Richard Hartwell found dead in prison cell. The anchor was speaking rapidly. We're receiving reports that Richard Hartwell IV, convicted last year for conspiracy fraud and multiple other charges related to the Hartwell family scandal, has been found dead in his cell at the federal penitentiary. Officials are not releasing details at this time, but sources say Sarah lowered her phone. Richard Hartwell was dead. The man who had threatened her baby, who had tried to destroy her life, who had been willing to kill to protect his family's secrets. Gone. She didn't know how to feel. Relief? Satisfaction? Something darker. Marcus appeared at her elbow. You've heard just now. The warden is calling it suicide, but there are rumors. Marcus's voice dropped. Richard had enemies inside. People he'd crossed in business deals, people whose families he'd destroyed. Some of them were also in that prison. You think someone killed him? I think we'll never know for sure, and I think it doesn't matter. Marcus looked at her steadily. It's over, Sarah. Really over. The Hartwells are finished. Richard is dead. Thomas is dead. The family trust is dissolved. There's no one left to fight. Sarah should have felt victorious. She had won. Against all odds, against all logic, she had won. But all she felt was tired. I need to see my daughter, she said. She found Elizabeth and explained she was leaving early. Are you okay? I will be. I just need to hold hope for a while. Elizabeth hugged her. You did something incredible today. Something Eleanor would have been proud of. Don't let Richard Hartwell's death take that away from you. I won't, but I need to process this. Away from the cameras. Sarah slipped out through a side entrance, avoiding the press, and drove home. Patricia met her at the door with Hope in her arms. I saw the news. Are you? Sarah took Hope and held her tight, burying her face in her daughter's soft hair. I'm okay. I'm just glad it's over. Is it? Patricia's voice was gentle. Is it really over? Sarah thought about the past year, the terror, the fights, the moments when she'd been certain she would lose everything. And then she thought about what she'd gained. A daughter, a home, a family, a purpose. Yes, she said finally. It's really over. The Hartwells are gone. Eleanor is remembered. Margaret has her history, and I have everything I never knew I needed. Patricia smiled. Then let's go inside. I made soup. That night, after Hope was asleep and Patricia had gone to bed, Sarah sat alone in her living room. She was holding Eleanor's second journal, the one Catherine Whitmore had given her. She'd read it dozens of times over the past year, but tonight it felt different. She opened to the final entry, Eleanor's last words before confronting William. Pray for me. Pray for Rose. Sarah closed the journal and looked up at the ceiling. I found her, she whispered. I found Rose's descendants. Your blood lives on Eleanor. Your story is being told. Your family knows who they are. Silence. Then so softly she might have imagined it a whisper of wind through the room, like a sigh of relief, like a soul finally at peace. Sarah smiled. Rest now? You've earned it. The wedding took place 6 months later on October 15th. Young Eleanor Brennan walked down a makeshift aisle in the vault where her ancestor had died. Sarah at her side, flower petals scattered across the stone floor. It was the strangest wedding venue anyone had ever seen, but also the most meaningful. Margaret Brennan sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face, surrounded by 4 generations of Eleanor's descendants. The ceremony was short and beautiful. Young Eleanor and her husband James exchanged vows in the very spot where old Eleanor had drawn her final breath. With this ring, James said, I promise to love you, honor you, and protect you. I promise to never let anyone silence you. I promise to stand beside you in every fight. Young Eleanor smiled through her tears. And I promise to be worthy of my name, to carry the legacy of Eleanor Hartwell with pride, to never forget what she suffered, and to live the life she never got to live. They kissed. The small crowd applauded. And Sarah, standing to the side with Hope on her hip, felt something shift in her chest. The vault had been a tomb for over a century, a place of death and secrets and sorrow. Now it was a place of love. Eleanor's prison had become Eleanor's monument. Her suffering had been transformed into celebration. And somehow, impossibly, everything had come full circle. After the wedding, Sarah found a quiet moment alone in the vault. She stood where Eleanor's skeleton had been found, now marked with a simple brass plaque in memory of Eleanor Hartwell. May she never be forgotten. I hope you saw that, Sarah said quietly. I hope wherever you are, you saw your namesake get married. I hope you saw how much your family loves you. She touched the plaque gently. I'm going to keep telling your story. I'm going to make sure the world never forgets what was done to you. And I'm going to raise my daughter to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. That's your legacy, Eleanor, not the way you died, the way you're remembered. Sarah turned to leave, then stopped. Thank you, she said, for leading me here, for trusting me with your secrets, for giving me a reason to keep fighting when I wanted to give up. I was just a cleaning lady. You made me into something more. She walked out of the vault back into the light. 2 years after Sarah bought the Hartwell estate for $350, she returned one final time. The mansion had been fully restored, now transformed into the Eleanor Hartwell Memorial Museum. Every room told a piece of the story: Eleanor's life, her affair with Thomas Brennan, her survival of the Titanic, her murder at her husband's hands. But there was a new addition, a room dedicated to Sarah herself. She hadn't wanted it. She'd argued with the museum board for months, but they'd insisted, and eventually she'd given in. The room was called The Courage to Speak. It told the story of how a pregnant cleaning lady had discovered the vault fought the Hartwell family and brought a century of secrets into the light. There were photographs of Sarah at the auction, Sarah exploring the mansion, Sarah holding hope for the first time, and there was a quote painted on the wall in large letters. "The truth always wins. It might take a century. It might take a desperate woman with nothing to lose, but it always wins. Sarah Mitchell." Sarah stood in front of that wall, Hope beside her now, 3 years old and full of questions. "Mama, is that you?" "Yes, baby, that's me." "Why are you on the wall?" Sarah knelt down to look her daughter in the eye. "Because I found something important here, something that had been hidden for a very long time, and I helped people understand what happened." "What happened?" Sarah thought about how to explain it to a 3-year-old. "A long time ago, there was a woman named Eleanor. She loved her baby very, very much. But some bad people took her baby away. They hurt Eleanor, and everyone forgot about her." Hope's eyes went wide. "That's so sad." "It is sad, but I found Eleanor's story. I told everyone what happened to her, and now no one will ever forget her again." "Did she get her baby back?" Sarah smiled, her eyes filling with tears. "Not exactly, but her baby grew up and had babies, and those babies had babies, and now there's a whole big family that loves Eleanor very much. They're her family, and they know who they are because of what I found here." Hope considered this seriously. "Mama, if someone took me away, would you find me?" Sarah pulled her daughter into a fierce hug. "I would never let anyone take you away, but if they tried, I would burn down the world to get you back." Hope giggled. "You're silly, Mama." "I'm serious, baby girl. There's nothing I wouldn't do for you, nothing." Hope hugged her back, her small arms tight around Sarah's neck. "I love you, Mama." "I love you too, Hope, more than anything in the world." They walked through the rest of the museum together, Sarah explaining each exhibit in terms Hope could understand. The vault was the last stop. It looked different now. Warm lighting. Comfortable benches. The crates replaced with display cases showing the treasures Eleanor had died trying to protect. And in the corner where Eleanor's skeleton had been found, a life-sized bronze statue. Eleanor Hartwell holding a baby in her arms. Rose. The daughter she'd lost. The daughter whose descendants now numbered in the dozens. The daughter whose legacy was finally, after 113 years, complete. Sarah and Hope stood in front of the statue for a long time. "She's pretty," Hope said. She was. She was very pretty and very brave. "Like you," Sarah laughed softly. "I don't know about pretty, but I try to be brave." "You are Mama. You're the bravest person I know." Sarah looked at her daughter, this miracle child who had survived against all odds, who had been the reason Sarah fought so hard, who was now standing in a museum dedicated to the woman whose discovery had changed everything. "You know what, baby, I think you're going to be braver than me." "Really?" "Really, because you're going to grow up knowing that one person can change the world. You're going to grow up knowing that the truth matters, that justice is worth fighting for, that ordinary people can do extraordinary things." Hope nodded seriously, though Sarah wasn't sure how much a 3-year-old could really understand. "And you're going to grow up knowing that your mama loves you more than life itself, that she fought for you before you were even born, and that she'll keep fighting for you every single day until the day she dies." Hope reached up and touched Sarah's face. "Don't cry, Mama." Sarah hadn't realized she was crying. "These are happy tears, baby. The happiest tears." She picked Hope up and carried her out of the vault, up the stairs, through the restored mansion, and out into the sunlight. Patricia was waiting by the car. "How was it?" "Perfect." "Duh." Sarah strapped Hope into her car seat. "Absolutely perfect. Ready to go home." Sarah looked back at the mansion one last time. She thought about everything that had happened in the past 3 years. The terror and the triumph. The despair and the hope. The moment she'd bought a decaying mansion for $350, never imagining what lay hidden beneath. She thought about Daniel, who had died too young, who had never met his daughter, who had somehow led her to this place even from beyond the grave. She thought about Eleanor, who had suffered so much, who had been silenced for so long, who was finally at peace. And she thought about Hope, her miracle, her reason for everything. "Yeah," Sarah said. I'm ready to go home." She climbed into the car and Patricia started the engine. As they drove away, Sarah didn't look back. She didn't need to. The past was finally settled. The dead were finally at rest. The truth had finally been told. And the future, Hope's future and her own, stretched out before her like a road with no end. Sarah reached back and squeezed her daughter's hand. Hope squeezed back. And in that moment, Sarah understood what Eleanor had known all along. That love survives. That truth prevails. That one woman with nothing but courage and conviction can change the course of history. Sarah Mitchell had been a pregnant cleaning lady with $347 and a dying dream. She had become a mother, a fighter, a legend. And she had proved once and for all that the smallest voices can echo the loudest if they refuse to be silenced. The Hartwell mansion grew smaller in the rearview mirror until it disappeared entirely. But Eleanor's story would never disappear again. It would live on in museums and history books. It would live on in Margaret Brennan and her descendants. It would live on in the Daniel Mitchell Foundation, which continued to help families who couldn't afford medical care. And it would live on in Hope Mitchell, who would grow up knowing exactly who she was and exactly what she was capable of. Because that was Eleanor's true legacy, not the treasure, not the scandal, not the century of secrets. The legacy was this, that love is stronger than hate, that truth is stronger than lies, and that one person, no matter how small, no matter how powerless, no matter how afraid, can stand up and say, "No more." Sarah had said no more, and the world had listened. Now it was Hope's turn, and someday it would be Hope's children's turn, and their children after that, generation after generation carrying the torch that Eleanor had lit and Sarah had kept burning. That was how change happened, not all at once, not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, through ordinary people making ordinary choices day after day, refusing to accept injustice, refusing to stay silent, refusing to give up. Sarah had made those choices. Eleanor had made those choices. And now, strapped into her car seat, watching the world go by through wide, curious eyes, Hope Mitchell was already learning to make those choices too. The end of one story, the beginning of another. And between them, a truth that would never be buried again. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision that something else matters more. Sarah Mitchell had found that something else in a vault beneath an abandoned mansion. She had found it in her daughter's heartbeat, strong and steady, where once it had faltered. She had found it in Eleanor's final words, preserved for a century, waiting for someone brave enough to speak them aloud. And she had found it in herself, in the woman she became when she had nothing left to lose. That woman had changed the world. And the world would never forget her, not because she was special, but because she was ordinary. And ordinary people, when they refuse to be silenced, are the most powerful force on earth. Sarah Mitchell knew that now. Eleanor Hartwell had always known it. And Hope Mitchell would spend her life proving it all over again, because that was how legacies worked. They didn't end. They just began again in new voices with new courage, carrying the same unshakable truth. The truth that Sarah had discovered in a vault beneath the Hartwell mansion. The truth that had cost Eleanor her life and given Sarah hers back. The truth that would echo through generations, growing stronger with each telling until it became something that could never be destroyed. And that truth was simple. It was written on a wall in the museum, painted on a statue's base, engraved on a brass plaque in a vault where a woman had died and a legend had been born. 3 words. The last words Eleanor ever wrote. The first words of every story worth telling. Love survives.